With the way that the grocery prices are today, it got me wondering if it's even possible to make 7 family meals for about $20. So I got to work, wrote a bunch of recipes, and I discovered I was able to make 7 family meals for less than $1 a serving. Most of them worked out to about 75 cents per serving. I am using a few things from my pantry, several seasonings, a little bit of butter and oil as well. So if you don't have those things on hand, I recommend picking them up or just substituting water or just omitting them altogether. So let's get started. Here is my list today. I do have some of the things at home already, but I'm going to show you what the prices are just in case you want to follow along. Ooh, eggs are $2.17. Okay, let's get 1 dozen. Make sure they're not broken or stuck to the bottom. All right. That's quite a good find, $2.17. Love that. So this week I'm making a ramen, but I have ramen at home, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. But you can get this pack of 6 for $2.55. But I think you might be surprised the way I use it this week. An avocado, yes, for 95 cents. Let's just get one. I wanted to try one of these brown rice and quinoa pastas. Let's see, how much protein? 4 grams of protein in a half a cup. How much does like regular spaghetti have? $2.09 for 2 pounds of this one. 8 grams. Okay, 8 grams of protein, and this is in 2 ounces. Although this chickpea pasta, now that's a whole nother thing. Now this one has 19 grams of protein, so maybe I'll do one of these because I'm trying to get the protein and the grain all in one for one dish. This is $2.69 for 12 ounces, but it will make it really easy. What about the fiber? 11 grams of fiber. I have regular pasta at home, but if not, I could get some of this regular penne for 99 cents as well, and he has 7 grams of protein and 2 grams of fiber. So yeah, fantastic. Now I have cans of black beans at home. They're 86 cents each here, but normally I just buy the dry beans, and those are $2.85 for 32 ounces. If I just needed to spend $2 though, I'd probably get just a couple cans of black beans because I'm just making a few things, but I prefer to make them from scratch. It's just so much cheaper, and I just freeze the rest usually. And then I need some cheese. Wisconsin extra sharp cheddar, $3.79 for a pound. Just has the best flavor. Tofu for $1.59. Such a great protein source. 9 grams of protein for 3 ounces. There's 4.5 servings here. And this is the extra firm organic tofu for $1.59. Now I need to get some frozen veggies. Let's see, I need mixed veggies. Where are the mixed veggies? 99 cents, such a deal. Then I need corn for $1.15. This was 99 cents, cheaper than I thought it was gonna be, so that's great. Next I need oats, $3.89 for 42 ounces. Go. So many ways to make this amazing. Let's see, 5 grams of protein and half a cup plus 4 grams of fiber as well. Love that. Some iron too, 8% of the daily value of iron. Okay, $3.89 for 42 ounces. Okay, spinach is $1.39. And if I don't use it all, I'll freeze it. Okay, this one looks good. Okay, tomatoes are 89 cents a pound. I have a ton in my freezer. I just needed to get 2 pounds, so 2 pounds would be a little over what I thought they would be, but thankfully I have some on hand, so that's okay. And I have the rice at home. I believe it's jasmine rice that I just bought. What, $5.89 for 5 pounds? It's just such a good deal. It's a really good deal. 7.4 cents per ounce. Or they have 2 pounds for $1.69. That is a really, really good deal. I don't think you can get a better deal anywhere. For dinners, I'm following a simple formula: protein, grain, and veggie. That's not how I normally shop, but this is a great way to kind of stay
under budget if you're really pressed, is to make sure we are getting a protein, a grain, and a veggie in every single dinner. So that's why I'm shopping like this week.
Now that we're back home, we can start cooking, but before we do that, I wanted to let you know that my meal planning guide is now available for download. I'll have the link down in the description for you so you can check that out. It includes over 50 recipes that are printable, as well as the meal planner page that you can print and reuse as needed, inventory sheets, freezer meals, free access to additional meal plans, starter pantry guide, all kinds of goodies. So please go down below in the description and check that out. I hope you love it as much as I do. A lot of work went into this, and I'm really excited to hear what y'all think. And now let's get to cooking.
Now for these recipes, I'm allowing myself to use a few things from the pantry, some seasonings like salt, pepper, garlic, maybe some soy sauce and olive oil or avocado oil. So you can use whatever you have on hand. I'll be letting you know what substitutions you can make depending on what you might have. Now, I am going to be getting some things from my freezer, pantry, and refrigerator, but I will let you know what the costs would be if you were to pick them up at the store so you can see exact costs of each meal. So I'm getting some tomatoes that I just freeze whole. I don't do anything to them. I just put them in the freezer, and then when I'm ready, I rinse them and then take them out and put them on the cutting board while I get everything else set up. This is about 50 cents to $1 in tomatoes. It's about a pound or so, and I am using tofu for this recipe. This is going to be a tofu bolognese. Tofu is a really inexpensive protein. It's about $1.59 at Aldi for me, so you should be able to get a block about 14 ounces or so for less than $2 depending on where you are located. I'm just going to pat this dry and crumble it, but if you have not tried tofu, definitely give it a go. It is actually a really delicious protein if you prepare it properly. For me, that just means making it nice and crispy, but that could mean something different for you. I'm just going to put it in the bowl and add some soy sauce. If you don't like soy sauce, you can do coconut aminos instead, and then I'm going to season with some garlic powder and a little bit of salt and pepper. You really need a lot of seasonings. The tofu is quite bland by itself and it soaks up flavors, so you need to add a bunch of seasonings to make the tofu taste really good. So I'm going to add a pretty good amount of soy sauce, maybe about 1 to 2 tablespoons or so, and then I'm just going to spread that out on a baking sheet lined with parchment. I'm just going to make sure it's in a nice even layer, and then I'm going to put that in the oven at 400 degrees for about 35 to 40 minutes, and I'll be stirring that about halfway through, and this is just going to get it nice and crispy. Now in the meantime, I'm going to chop up my tomatoes. This doesn't have to be exact. I'm just chopping it because I'm going to be using these in a sauce. You can use a can of diced tomatoes if that's what you have on hand, crushed tomatoes, really any tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, anything that you have on hand will work. And don't forget that. Use what you have on hand if you can. I just find that the fresh tomatoes usually end up being the least expensive, and I also end up growing some of my own every year, so I have a ton. So this is just the cheapest way for me to do it. Now I'm going to heat some oil in a pot and put some garlic powder and just get that nice and toasty. You'll know it's ready when it's fragrant, when you start smelling that garlic smell. Then we'll add in the tomatoes. We're just making a really simple homemade tomato sauce. You don't have to use a can of pasta sauce or a jar of pasta sauce. You can make it really, really easily and add a ton of seasonings. This time I'm just making a very simple one to show you that you can do it with just very, very few ingredients. Just the garlic powder will be plenty for this sauce. You can also season it with salt and pepper, whatever you like. Now I'm giving that tofu a mix that's been about 20 minutes or so. You can see it's already getting a little bit browned. And what I like about doing this oven method is I don't have to keep a super close eye on it. It's not going to burn super quickly, so it gives me more time to focus on everything else. Now you see I'm simmering away this sauce. It's going to reduce on its own. Just keep a close eye on it after 10 minutes or so to make sure it doesn't over reduce, which I did accidentally. But I'm using some penne pasta that I have in the pantry, and this cost me about $1 when I purchased it. So it may just depend on if you can find some on clearance or what the prices are like. You can also check and see if you can find a small 7-ounce bag for about 29 cents, and that's usually in the Hispanic food section. Now you can see that my sauce is ready at this point. I should have turned off the heat, but I let it go and it over reduced. So I just recommend keeping an eye on it after about 10 minutes and then just turning off the heat. Now you can see this tofu is nice and crispy, so I can pull that out of the oven and start adding all the ingredients together. The pasta is all cooked through, so I'm just going to strain that. Then I'll add my tofu to my sauce. sauce and give that a stir until it's nice and coated. And then I will add my pasta and coat that as well with the sauce and serve it up. This is great with some Parmesan cheese on top too, but I would recommend adding some spinach or other veggies to really make this a complete meal. I completely forgot, but you should add the spinach with the sauce to make sure it's a little bit easier to wilt. It only takes a moment or so. Once the sauce is reduced and you add in the tofu, add the spinach at that point, give it a stir. It only takes a minute or so to wilt, and then you can add the noodles and stir everything up and serve it up. I definitely think this meal is super delicious and coming in at under $4 for a family of 4 or maybe more. It is a really great value. So definitely put this one on the list if you're looking for something budget friendly. This next dinner idea coming in at under $3 for 4 servings is my take on a classic rice and beans dinner. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cook my rice and set that aside. I cooked 1 cup of rice. That's about 75 cents worth of rice, although I should have cooked 2 cups of rice and saved half because I will be using some later in the week that I needed chilled rice for. So just keep in mind if you're doing this with me, just cook the 2 cups of rice at this point and save half. Now I have this can of beans on hand. It cost me about $1 when I picked it up, about 87 cents or so actually, and I'm just going to be making some homemade refried beans here. I rarely use cans anymore, but I did have some on hand. Normally I would make my beans from scratch using dried beans, and that is actually more budget friendly. So if you can do that, cook up an entire pound of beans at once and then freeze them in smaller portions, that would even save you more money. So you could make your refried beans after making your beans from scratch too in the pot. It's super easy just to have a separate pan right next to them and just heat up some oil, add some beans, and then mash them and add a little bit of the bean water to just thin it out if you like. Now once it's nice and mashed and the consistency that I like, I'm just going to serve it up with the rice and a little bit of avocado on the side. I just used 1 avocado for 4 people here, but of course you can do more. They were $1 each this week, so I didn't have it in the budget to get more, but depending on how much they cost, you can use a little bit more. Now this may look super plain, but it actually is full of flavor, very filling and delicious, a really great budget friendly meal. You could even add it to a tortilla for a burrito. This next dinner idea is a super easy meal that can come together in less than 20 minutes as well. It's a bean and cheese skillet over rice. I'm just going to add about 1 can's worth of black beans to a skillet. Again, you can use any beans that you like, and if you make them homemade, it will cost even less, but 1 can costs about $1 or so at Aldi for me, about 87 cents. Then I'll use half of a bag of frozen corn, heat that up. That's coming in at 57 cents or so. Add some taco seasoning, a little bit of water. I'll just let that thicken up until it's nice and saucy, and then I'll just put that on top of some rice. It's about a cup of rice for 4 people, so that's about 75 cents or so. And then I'll add about $1's worth of cheddar cheese on top, and that's it for this dish. You can add hot sauce, you can add salsa, you can zhuzh it up any way that you like. It's really great in a tortilla too. So if you don't want to serve it over rice like this, there's all kinds of different ways that you can do this. This comes out to about $3.20 for this entire meal. Now I'm going to show you, if you had some tortillas on hand, you can use some of the leftovers to make a really, really delicious lunch. I'm using a little bit of the refried beans and some of that corn and black bean mixture and some rice, and I'm just going to put that in a tortilla and fold it up. And of course you can stop there and serve it as is, but I'm going to level it up and I'm just going to make it nice and toasty in a skillet. So after I fold this up, I'm just going to put it in a nonstick skillet. You can use any skillet that you have, and I'm just going to get it nice and crispy and toasty on all sides, and then I'll serve that on up, and that'll be it for this dish. I love to use my leftovers in different ways to make meals more interesting for the week. So this is just one little idea. Depending on what you might have on hand, you can see how you can use all of those different ingredients in all kinds of different ways to make really delicious food that will fill you up and really not cost a lot of money. So I highly recommend looking at your leftovers in a different way and turning them into something new, and try to avoid doing takeout if you can. This next recipe is one of my favorite easy meals that is full of flavor, and it comes in at about $3.13. So first I'm going to start by breaking 4 eggs in a bowl. This part's actually optional. You don't have to break them and whisk them together, but you can. It comes in at 88 cents for about 4 eggs for me. The eggs cost about $2.50 or so per dozen this week, so it will greatly depend on how much your eggs cost, of course. And then I have that leftover rice, which I forgot to make extra, so it ended up being frozen because I was trying to chill it in advance. Just put it in the fridge for 2 hours. You don't need to put it in the freezer, but you do want chilled leftover rice from the day before if possible. It will make the rice really nice and crispy. Now the first step, I'm just going to put some oil in a pan and heat up a bag of mixed veggies. That's $1.15 at Aldi for me for those mixed veggies. Then I'll remove those and set that aside. Then I'm using some oil and butter in the pan, and I'll melt that butter and then add my rice. Now the rice will turn out kind of soggy if you have frozen rice like me. So if you have frozen rice, maybe let it thaw in the refrigerator so that way it doesn't end up soggy. Now I'll just saute that rice until it gets nice and toasty, and I'm going to season this with some soy sauce. I'm using about 2 tablespoons total for this recipe, about 12 cents or so of soy sauce and about 23 cents in butter. So I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of soy sauce here and season that with some salt and pepper and really get all of the seasonings in there. Give it a nice toss, and then once that's nice and browned and toasty, I'll remove that as well and set it aside. If you want, you can just make a well in the center for this next step. You don't have to remove the rice. So if you want it a little bit more crispy, just push the rice to the edges and pour a little bit of oil in the center, and then you can crack your eggs in the center and scramble those up. At this point, just push the eggs around until they are nice and cooked through and scrambled to your liking. They're going to continue to cook a little bit with the rest of the ingredients when you add them back in, so just keep that in mind. Add everything else back in and give it a good toss and a stir. Add that remaining tablespoon of soy sauce and another little pat of butter and some more salt and pepper. That's how you get the restaurant quality flavor, is using the butter and making sure you season with salt and pepper throughout the cooking process. And that is it for this dish. You're just going to serve it on up and enjoy your super budget friendly egg fried rice. Next, I'm making ramen, but it's not probably the ramen that you're thinking of. Now you can buy a full container of 6 or 12 for about $2.50 to $3 at Walmart of the ramen that you see coming in the packages. You can use that. I am using a different kind of ramen. I'll show you here in just a minute. I am using 8 eggs for this because I'm planning on making a lot of soup. So I'm just going to scramble those in a separate container. I'm using about $1.76 in eggs for this recipe. This is going to serve up to 6 people. Now I have these different noodles. I've got this ramen here from Aldi. This was, I believe, about $1.99 for a bag for 4 servings. So again, the price can vary, but this is the kind of noodle I have on hand. But if you have those packets of ramen, just use the noodles. And if you want to use the seasoning, you can, that comes in it. If you're not a fan of the high sodium, you can make your own veggie stock or chicken stock, something like that. You can really just make this your own. But for me, I'm going to show you how I season this and how I make this really budget friendly using what I already have on hand. So I'm going to be using these ramen noodles and some chicken flavor bouillon. I got this huge container for about $5. So really I'm just using a tiny bit. So it's negligible, the cost for this. I highly recommend keeping one in your pantry for super easy broths when needed, but it is high in sodium and does have MSG in it. So just keep that in mind if that's a concern for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is heat up about 12 cups of water in a really large stock pot. You can use as much or as little water as you like for this, but again, I'm making a lot of servings, so I'm using a lot of water and a few teaspoons of that bouillon, and I'm just going to mix it up. Now, my ramen noodles, or pho noodles in this case that I'm using, are recommended to cook separately. So I'm boiling some water separately, and I'm going to strain and rinse those noodles when they're done, because that is how these ones are cooked. With the individual packets of ramen, you can just cook it all in one pot. It'll be even easier. So once my broth has heated and it's not boiling, but it's hot, I'm going to slowly stir in my eggs that I've beaten separately, and doing this slowly like this and adding it slowly into the pot is going to create these beautiful egg ribbons, and these are just delicious in soups. So this is going to add all of the protein here for this, plus there's a little bit of protein in those noodles as well, and I'm just going to stir that until it's all the way in, and it'll be already cooked through as basically as soon as it hits the water, so you don't even have to worry about letting it go. And look how beautiful these egg ribbons are. Then I am just going to add some spinach here to my bowls along with the noodles. So that's going to add my veggies, but you can use frozen mixed veggies or any veggies that you have on hand to add to the soup. The amount of spinach that I used in this recipe came out to about 46 cents. I'm able to get a full bag, a 10-ounce bag of spinach at Aldi for about $1.39 to $1.50. $1.50 or so. So again, that'll just depend on what veggies you use for this, but this entire recipe comes out to $3.53 with all of these ingredients. So that'll vary just a little bit, but really budget friendly, super delicious. You can add some soy sauce, some hoisin, some hot sauce if you like, and enjoy. Next, I'm making something a little bit different for dinner. This is a savory egg and corn oatmeal. Trust me, it is delicious. If you have not tried savory oatmeal, give this one a go and see what you think. I'm just going to add my water, oats, a little bit of soy sauce, and some sriracha to a pan. I'll bring that to a simmer and let that cook for about 4 minutes while it thickens. And in the meantime, I'm going to fry 4 eggs for 4 servings, 1 egg for 1 serving. So for 4 eggs, we're looking at 88 cents. 2 cups of oatmeal will be 52 cents. And then after 4 minutes of cooking on this oatmeal, I am going to add about 1 cup of corn, and that'll be about 57 cents or so. It's about a half a can of corn drained and rinsed, or a half of a 10-ounce bag of frozen corn. So it's up to you, whatever you have on hand. And then once that corn is in, we'll just cook it through and then serve it on up with this fried egg on top. The entire meal comes out to $1.97 for 4 servings. Super budget friendly, very delicious, super filling. If you haven't tried savory oatmeal, this is the perfect recipe to give a try. I really hope to hear what you think of this one after you try it, because it really has changed my mind about savory oats. And I actually have a few other savory oats recipes that I love, but this one is by far the easiest and least expensive. I always add hot sauce on top of mine, but you can see how delicious this is. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to hear what you think. This next recipe is another pasta recipe. However, I am using this chickpea penne that I found at Aldi for $2.69, and it has a whopping 19 grams of protein per serving. So it really is super budget friendly, very filling. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going to do. I actually picked up the ingredients and then saw this recipe on the back. So I think I'm going to use the seasonings on the back of the box here that it recommends, and then just use what I have on hand for everything else. So again, I'm getting some frozen tomatoes. I'm using a few extra tomatoes this time, but still about 50 cents to $1 worth of tomatoes. And you can use canned tomatoes again, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, whatever you have on hand, just use that, because again, we're using some tomatoes to make a homemade sauce. And this one is going to be a little bit different than the first one that I showed you, so you can really see what seasonings might do to really add a ton of flavor. So you can see how many tomatoes I've got diced up here, just roughly chopped, not a big deal. I'm going to add some oil to the pan, and again, add some garlic powder, and just let that cook and get fragrant for a couple of seconds. It only takes about 30 seconds to a minute or so for this step. You'll smell the garlic, then add the tomatoes. So you may notice that this is exactly the same thing that I did for the first sauce. The only difference here now is I'm going to add some onion powder, about a teaspoon of oregano, and some salt and pepper at this point, and just let that sauce reduce. And I'm not going to over reduce the sauce. I'm only going to let this sauce go for a maximum of 10 minutes or so. I want it to be really nice and saucy. But with this chickpea penne, you want to make sure you get a lot of flavor, because it does need a lot of seasoning to really add a ton to this dish. It's definitely different than regular pasta, but I will say I am actually now in love with this chickpea penne, and I'm going to be using it a lot because the flavor was amazing and I really like the texture. It really holds up too as a leftover dish, and it doesn't fall apart. So I love, love, love it. And if you haven't tried it, definitely give it a try. So you can see that the sauce is reducing now, and I'm cooking my pasta in the meantime, and I'm going to just strain it out and set it aside. Now, after the sauce has reduced, I'm going to go ahead and add the spinach. I'm redeeming myself. I'm showing you exactly how to do it this time. Just add the spinach to the sauce and give it a stir. It will only take about 1 or 2 minutes to wilt, and so it won't take long at all. Wilt it as much or as little as you like, and just continue to stir. Now, once that penne pasta is cooked through, we're going to strain it and then add it to the pan here and just let that cook for another minute or so. I'm using about 46 cents of spinach, and you can use any vegetable that you like. Zucchini would be really good in this too. Any vegetable that you love will work. Just make sure that you add something to really make this a nice balanced meal. You can see how much pasta this gets us too. It really was a lot. We ended up having quite a bit for leftovers, so that was wonderful, and we just served it on up, and the total for this one was $3.65. I have noticed that we did not use all of the oats, so you have plenty left over to make breakfast. This has about 30 servings in it. That's half cup portions. So some things that I recommend are overnight oats, which I like to actually make with milk or non-dairy milk and some Greek yogurt, chia seeds, vanilla, and some syrup or honey. So that is an option. You could also just add water to the oats and put it in the refrigerator and still have overnight oats. And you can add any toppings that you like, or of course you can make the oatmeal just as is, as suggested. And as a bonus, you could make yourself some homemade granola bars like this. I'll put the recipes down in the description or on the blog as well, so you can see those different options for using this as a different sort of breakfast idea. We also are going to have a lot of the cheddar cheese left over. You may be able to find a smaller pack of cheese at Walmart for about $2, but at my Aldi, we can only buy it in a pound for $3.79. So again, use this on anything if you want to add extra to your dishes for the week, or you can use it for something entirely different for next week. I can't wait to hear what you think of these recipes and what you think of my new meal planning guide. I am so excited for y'all to check that out and let me know what you think. The ingredients in this video also have lots of recipes that I use them for in my meal planning guide, so I really hope you check that out and get some more inspiration. And if you have any suggestions for what to use some of those leftover ingredients for, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm sure everybody would love to read more suggestions too. Now, I have a lot of other meal plans here on my channel if you need some more inspiration, so go ahead and go check those out. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and put that bell on for notifications. See you next time. Bye.